All right, so now that I have a centered lump of clay, the next thing I need to do is open it up so I can make it into a vessel. And to do that, my left hand's gonna be in the exact same position. It's still in that 90-degree bend, kind of that capital L shape. My left elbow is locked in at my hip, and my thumb is leaning forward a little bit. So I want this curve to be mimicked in the clay. With my right hand, I'm gonna put my first and third finger on top of my middle finger. So they're a little bit higher and raised, and I'm gonna kick my thumb out. Okay, so it's kind of like that. My right thumb is gonna wrap around my left wrist for support. So unlike centering, my left hand is not adding any pressure at this point. What it's doing is giving a really nice stable platform for my right hand. And I'm gonna touch down with the pad of my middle finger, so you can see where the slip is there. It's only on that part. And I'm gonna drive down. And I'm going for a cylinder here, not a bowl, so I want this to be fairly narrow, but not so narrow that it looks like I took a cordless drill and drilled down. In fact, as soon as I lift up my wrist, if I do that, I'm going to lose center and throw this lump of clay off. Instead, I want to keep my right wrist very, very low and continue to drive down. And if you're pressing really hard and feel like you're not making a whole lot of progress, it's not going deeper, think about pushing a little bit forward, kind of towards 12 o'clock if you imagine the wheel as a clock face, as you drive down. But unlike most of what we do on the wheel, right now I want to use a lot of my fingers. So it's my middle finger touching clay, and it's this entire surface to open this pot up into a narrow V shape. I don't want it to be drilled in like this, super, super vertical, and I don't want to open it wide. I want a nice narrow V shape. Then I can stop the wheel. And if I take any kind of needle tool and I put my index finger kind of towards the top of that needle, I can stab down through the clay, run my finger down till it touches clay and freeze it there. And that'll show me how thick my floor is. So we want something like 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch, depending on whether or not you're going to trim a foot. Now, I need to make this a little bit wider. So I'm determining what kind of pot I want to make right now. If I want to make a straight walled cylinder, basically what I'm deciding is how wide this pot is going to be, and I want to open it to that exact width at the bottom minus the wall thickness. So if I want this to be about 4 inches wide, I'm going to open it to be about 3.5 inches, and then I'll have 1/4 of an inch wall thickness on either side, so it ends up being 4 inches. But to do that, I'm going to get the same fingers of my right hand down on the inside, so it's my middle finger doing most of the work here, and I'm going to very slowly straighten it out. And if you think about the way that my fingers would naturally move kind of like a swing back and forth, that tends to make a rounded bottom. So I'm basically going to give a little bit of downward pressure as I bring that back to try to keep this as flat as possible. And once they're straight, those fingers are vertical, straight up and down, I'm going to pull back a little bit further and give a tiny tuck back, because I want this to end up like a volcano, leaning in, where my wall is thickest at the bottom and a little bit thinner as it moves up. So here we go. Slowly coming back. It's mainly my fingertip on that middle finger of my right hand engaging clay, and slowly more and more clay is going to creep up my hand till I'm out as wide as I'd like for it to be. Then I'm going to hold still and let go slow. That's really, really important. If you let go too quickly, you can see I threw that whole ring off. So it's really important that you give this clay time to stretch and open up evenly. If it does get a little bit off, your order of operations here is to drive in from the outside, from the bottom up, some kind of rolling pressure up with that left hand, and then give a light squeeze back from the inside with that middle finger again, from the bottom up, and then lastly, with whatever part of your hand is there, whether it's your left thumb or this part of your right hand, put some pressure down on the rim. And when we're making a lot of pots, if you see someone who's thrown lots and lots of pots for years, you'll see they center pretty quickly, rip that clay open, and hold still in this position, and that's when true center happens. So I really recommend giving that a try, because when you get the hang of it, it takes a lot of the pressure off of having everything perfectly centered and opening up perfectly. But that's once you feel pretty good about your opening technique. So give that a try.